This DVD has been produced by the FJ Foundation, the custodian of the FJ archives, to assist the discussion with regard to the future of Pleasant Hill. My name is David Jones. I worked with the company for 40 years and had a close relationship with my father until his death in 1977. As most people are aware, the Pleasant Hill site was originally a quarry and a rubbish tip. My father purchased the first parcel of land in 1947 and then purchased army huts from Darley Camp near Bacchus Marsh. I visited Darley at Bacchus Marsh with my mother and father to inspect the buildings. They were either dismantled by Charlie Ryan's team or in some cases brought to Warrnambool in one piece. They were relocated on that first parcel of land. The remaining land was purchased between April 1949 and February 1952. The locals called it Shantytown, much to my father's annoyance. The opening took place on the 21st of May 1948 and I attended the opening. In fact, some of the photos that are included in this DVD were taken by me. The facade of the original buildings was designed by Tag Walter, who worked with my father on subsequent extensions. The factory consisted of the old officers' mess as the main machine room, with service functions such as pressing, dispatch, sewing machine mechanics, and the canteen built where the verandas had been around the mess hall. To the east of the officers' mess was the former post office, which became the cutting room. Here's Mr. Denman laying the stone, my photos. The stone has since been moved to the front of the factory as a result of changes. Invited guests waiting to get into the canteen. My father looking rather pleased with himself, which was justified at the time of the opening. A shot I took of the interior of the canteen, waiting for the guests to arrive, and a shot rarely seen before of the cake that was made for the occasion. After the opening, as a result of the establishment of the gardens by my uncle Darby Boucher, Shantytown was renamed Pleasant Hill by the Mayor of Warrnambool. Darby, who had green thumbs, according to my father, worked hard to fill in the quarries and to plant the gardens, and together they designed the layout. These are some shots which show detail of the original factory and the early gardens. There was a large garden bed at the top of the drive. In 1949 we bought a US Army Quonset hut from Milne Bay. This was erected by Harry Duggan and the maintenance staff. Note in one of the shots a house behind the Quonset hut. This was on private land still owned facing Lava Street. Also in one of the shots, this one, you'll see a fence being built. That was the extent of the western boundary at that stage. The Quonset hut is largely intact, even though it's concealed behind the walkway. In its heyday it looked pretty good. And it housed the after-sales and alteration workrooms. This was how it looked in 1949. Then there are some interiors. First of all, interior of the after-sales factory. The Quonset hut was lined with a heavy crepe building paper which was painted. This is the alteration workroom, the after-sales press room, 2 shots of that. A further shot of the workroom with my Auntie Fletcher Jones, who was in charge. This is a shot in the main canteen at the front of the factory. There were 2 sittings, and a shot in the cutting with John Asprey wielding the knife. The next shot is in the main machine room in the officers' mess. Between 1950 and 1951 the gardens evolved. The after-sales building was completed and the Bristol hut was added between the main factory building and the after-sales building to act as a headquarters for the mail order company, with John Asprey's father in charge. This is the Bristol hut. You'll see the after-sales on the right and the edge of the main factory on the left. Small pergolas started to appear in the gardens, and a single pergola in front of the after-sales. This was a view from my father's office looking across to Duke's Floral Farm and Daisy Hill, and a view looking past the after-sales towards the city and the land we didn't own. In 1951, additional land was purchased from the council for future manufacturing expansion, and 3 staff houses were erected on this land. The round room was added, a 2-level extension to the canteen to cope with the increased number of staff. These people are sitting where the sunken garden now is. Between 1952 and 1954, the sunken garden was built, the Rocklands Dam building put in place. Harry Duggan had a special purchase of floodlights, and the cutting room was extended to the east. The floodlights made a spectacular sight at night, which many of us can remember, and my father was not adverse to advertising signs in the gardens. This is a good view of Pleasant Hill in those early days. In 1955 the new canteen was built, the first basket of flowers constructed, lampposts and period lights were installed between the houses in the gardens and the main garden. This is a view from the canteen looking out over the gardens. And the Fletcher Jones man and seat at the eastern driveway with the staff houses behind. The after-sales Quonset hut had been extended to the west, and some staff gathered in that area for a photograph. There are the lamps in front of the houses. In 1957 the cutting and sewing room was extended again, the after-sales factory was extended at the rear, the rotunda was built and navy blue vertical louvers appeared on the new cutting room extension with a large FJ sign. FJ says compare. In 1958, the cutting room was extended 6 foot into the car park at the top of the drive, and the Sputnik water feature was built in the front of the gardens on Raglan Parade. You'll see the blue louvers starting to feature on more of the factory as we connected the old factory with the new canteen, and you'll see in this photo the FJ Compare sign. In 1959, a new skirt sewing machine was constructed above the original canteen, and a freak storm destroyed the single pergola. There's the new skirt room being built, and the spot where the pergola was. In 1960, twin pergolas were built to replace the single pergola that had been destroyed. You can see to the east that the staff houses still exist, and that all of the extension was in line with the original cutting and sewing room to the east behind the houses towards the Rocklands building. But at this point you see the factory extending along the driveway to the north. In 1960 the houses were removed, the fabric cellars excavated, and the cutting room building commenced. This is the first of the houses to be taken away. They were taken down to Pleasantville at the hostel further down Flaxman Street. FJ staff did all of the steel work. In 1962 the navy blue colour scheme and the louver treatment extended to all building facades, and the after sales was extended. In 1962, Gordon Delisle, a famous Melbourne photographer, came to Warrnambool to photograph garments and took an excellent series of shots of staff leaving the factory in the evening and other shots around the factory, including many interiors which I have not included on this DVD. These were the famous FJ doors that had been at the Collins Street shop where the men queued for trousers. They were subsequently destroyed by vandals. The blue colour and the louvers was tying all of the new buildings together, and we thought the entire look was very appropriate for the time. In September 1962, Gordon Delisle again took a photograph of Pleasant Hill from the company aircraft. And in this you'll see the cutting room extension to Flaxman Street and two houses still in existence with the Darley building behind. I'm sorry, the Rocklands building behind. In 1963 to 1966, the remaining Lava Street houses were removed and the factory extended along Lava Street. There's a shot from the far end of the gardens showing one of the new chimneys and the Sputnik Tower and the common colour scheme right throughout. This shows the two extensions and the new extension along Lava Street. You can see the way the blue colour had faded. This subsequently caused problems and caused us to change to the white that we have today. A terrace garden was built along the Raglan Parade frontage, and various advertising features appeared in the gardens. In 1964, Darby Boucher died, and a fountain memorial was opened in his memory by his son Ken and his wife Amni, my father's sister. In 1967, a new entrance was constructed at the top of the drive and the water tower was constructed, as well as the cascade waterfalls. This is a photo taken by my brother Ralph from the water tower, which shows the various roof lines of the original factory. A view from the front fence at the time when we still had the compost area along that boundary. The piece of front fence, which was high maintenance and had deteriorated badly and was eventually replaced with the current fence. In 1972 we opened Pleasant Park in Mount Gambier as a result of the inability to get staff in Warrnambool. The staff numbers in 1972 were Warrnambool 929, Brunswick 467 and Mount Gambier 62. This is a shot of the Warrnambool staff gathered in the gardens, and there were 950 people there. In 1973, the skirt factory was built west of after sales to allow cutting room expansion to the east. A training centre was built in one of the houses on Lava Street, and the Pleasant Hill staff totalled 1036. In 1974, the training centre was officially opened by Tom Uren, Minister for Urban and Regional Development. The first floor office extension above the car park was completed, and a covered way was built to connect the skirt factory with the canteen. In 1974, a new look facade for the factory was introduced, and the high maintenance navy blue louvers were removed and a white low maintenance materials used in their place. There's a shot from the other side of the highway. We had a twin highway, of course, at that stage. And 3 years before he died, here's a photo of FJ looking pretty pleased with his new baby in its new livery. These photos are of Pleasant Hill in 1978. Pleasant Hill is virtually unchanged from this period. This shot from the air shows the full estate, and it's pretty well what remains today. The new fence and various other features. The Conservation Management Plan has now been released for public comment. This plan concludes that a number of the original elements of the buildings in existence between 1948 and 1956 should be reconstructed or reinstated. The later buildings and appearance of Pleasant Hill are to some extent discounted as being ad hoc or warehouse type structures and should or could be removed. The dynamic of the development of this manufacturing facility was driven by my father's belief that it was better to own a market than to own a factory. The factory was therefore extended as necessary to meet the demands of the marketplace. I believe that the true heritage of Pleasant Hill is more profound than the reconstruction of the original appearance of the buildings, and that the citizens of Warrnambool should be very concerned at the unnecessary financial implications of the current recommendations.